Hi, this is Ryan and
Victoria.
And we wanted to share our birth story with you. And I say our as if I delivered the baby, but of course she delivered the baby. And we're going to do it as quickly as we can because we can hear Mila stirring.
And she's up. She's still got about 2 hours of sleep, but I think she's probably hearing that we're not downstairs, and so she's trying to be cranky. Hashtag parent life. You know what? I'm gonna snack while he gets her. You know, I'm surprised because I thought that she needs like a quiet room to sleep, but she actually likes the noise. She sleeps really well throughout the noise. By the way, I'm eating Mom's cottage cheese. All right, so I started contractions at 4:30 in the morning, and they were mild. It's like a very mild period. You just kind of start feeling that. And I think Ryan thought that contractions were something that you feel like actually like almost like crunching, like maybe something inside of you kind of like squeezing, and it's not. It actually starts like a regular normal period, and they kind of come as waves. Like before, when people described contractions as waves, I was like, that's such a weird way to describe them, but that's exactly how it is, because it's very intense. It starts very like slow, and then it's intense, and then it kind of passes on and you have a break. But I started, and then we decided that we were going to go see our OBGYN in the morning or afternoon, so I called so she can kind of check my progress. So we scheduled an appointment that same day, so we kind of slept through the night because I was trying to get some rest as much as possible. And we went at 1 p.m. She checked me, and I was actually 2 centimeters dilated, and I think like maybe 75% effaced, something like that. But of course we were waiting on contractions, and we wanted to stay at home as long as possible to labor. We have a big bathtub, and water really relaxes me. So what we started to do was, I think they really got intense at 12 o'clock at night.
Which was the 23rd.
Which was, yeah. Basically 2 days I've kind of labored. But I mean, I know people say like I labored 48 hours, but they really didn't get intense until like that evening, where I couldn't even lay down. Like laying down was so painful, and Ryan was kind of helping me, coaching me through the breathing. And then I got in the water, I think twice.
Here at the house. So that led her up to about midnight, and then the contractions got heavier and heavier because she came in. She slept in the bed with me, and that became probably the most painful up to that point. She got in the bath just a little bit more, and then it was about 2:30 in the morning, and we said, let's just go ahead and call and just see where we're at. And so we called, and she took us through a couple of questions. It was the on-call nurse, and then we pretty much decided that the pain had gotten to a place where it was probably time to drive, because the hospital's about 45 minutes away. So it was about 4:30 when we finally got checked in and got there, and they said that she was 5 centimeters dilated, 90% effaced, and then they said, okay, let's get you checked into a room. And then that's really where the journey began. They left us to ourselves. They really honored our birth plan, which was to have as little intervention as possible.
Besides the contractions, was probably the worst part of being in the hospital is being monitored. You have like those 2 belts on top of your belly. You're experiencing contractions. It's like having major cramps and somebody putting so much pressure on it. Like you want to be free. You know how you want to like unbuckle your pants from period because you're swelling, or you're bloating and you're in pain. You don't want anything to be touching you, and you have like these 2 belts on you, and they're monitoring, and you have to like lay there still in the bed. And I'm like, who in the world in so much pain wants to sit in the bed and experience all that, So I tried to walk around, and of course intermittent means that they were just monitoring and I could be off and on. And so I would try to walk around, breathe through it. And then we got in the bathtub. I think I got in the bathtub probably 2 or 3 times. That helped extremely. I think it went like from like 2 notches down as far as the pain level. But their bathtubs were very uncomfortable. I don't even know if anybody uses them in the hospital, but I just got in there for the sake of being more comfortable. So I think like 10 or 11 o'clock hit around, and I was in
10 or 11 in the morning, yeah.
Yeah, 10 or 11 in the morning, and I was in so much pain. I think the midwife came only once, and she said, we will honor your birth plan. You just tell us what you want us to do.
Which we didn't know that would mean they just left us alone.
Yeah.
There were periods of like 2 to 3 hours where it was just Viktoriya and myself, and just in their laboring, Viktoriya was there, and I was encouraging her as much as I could, rubbing her back. And when we first came in, the nurse was, all of the nurses actually were extremely surprised that Viktoriya wanted to do it naturally. They were, I mean, I really was astounded at how surprised that they were, and very kind of nervous. Like, you've never dealt with anybody that wanted to be natural. It was like we were a rare species of people. So they pretty much left us alone. The nurse was very nice, but she seemed, you know, young and hadn't been in the process too long. So she really didn't have much advice to give us at certain points. So especially when we got to the point at about 10 or 11 in the morning, Viktoriya was in the bath, and I just noticed something, you know, I wouldn't say protruding, but
bulging. Something
bulging down there, of course. And so I brought in the nurse and another nurse, and they were like, well, let's get you up on the bed and check you. And they were kind of looking at each other and talking around. And basically the gist that I got was that there were several women pushing or, you know, getting a C-section at the same time. And they only have one doctor and one midwife on site at the time. And so when we first did our walkthrough, they were like, it's rare, it never happens that more than one woman is giving birth, and there should always be, you know, a midwife or a doctor just readily available, which was not the truth, because, or we were the rare occasion, which I don't think that we were, because it seemed like this was a normal thing. But so when they pulled her up on the bed, the second nurse checked her and said, you are 7 centimeters dilated, which was one up from about 4 hours before when they told us that we were 6. When we first came in, they said we were 5. Then when we transferred to the delivery room, they said she was 6. So we had labored all that time. And I say we, but Viktoriya had labored, and I coached her through it, and it was only one more. But what they said was that she had a bulging bag, which was prohibiting, I guess, her cervix from dilating anymore. And they said we can just let it naturally happen, which may be hours and hours more, you know, laboring, which Viktoriya was very exhausted at that point. Or they said we can burst the bag and you'll probably go into the pushing phase pretty immediately. So we said, well, yeah, well, let's go ahead and do that, so that Viktoriya could have some relief and the baby could go ahead. Because at that point, Viktoriya was feeling the pushing contractions.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't, because I'm a first time, you know, mom, like they always say that you almost like get in a trance of doing your contractions and breathing through them, that whenever you actually get to the pushing stage and you have to breathe with, like you have to actually push with the pushing contractions, and it switched, and it was like an hour before they actually delivered her. I felt that urge. It felt a lot easier for me to like bear down than it was to breathe through them.
And like, she was actually pushing.
Yeah.
And at that point, they had already called the midwife, but of course she was delivering
busy,
another baby.
And they were like, don't try to push because that makes your cervix, that can make your cervix swell. Like,
and so they said
you would have to go to OR. And I'm like, well, I don't want that. But I was almost going insane. Like at that time, I told Ryan, I said, if I am not at a 10, I don't know what I am. Like, there's just no way I can experience any more pain than I'm already experiencing. And because I had that bulging bag, she's yawning. Because I had that bulging bag, it was kind of prohibiting me to do it. But as soon as the midwife came in, and you could tell she was rushing in, everything just started happening so quickly. She busted my bag, and she was holding my cervix open, and she told me to breathe through 2 contractions, because
And,
there was like this like small portion of the cervix that wouldn't go over her head, and so she kind of held it, and that was so painful because they laid me back all the way down, and I'm like, there's no way. I mean, I can barely breathe. I have this big old belly. Can you imagine like trying to sleep and you have like a 40-week pregnant belly?
And the pain seemed to be more when she was sitting in the bed versus walking around or on the medicine ball or in the tub.
It was extremely, because it's like somebody's telling you to stay still whenever you're at a 10. And so
so when they busted the bag, it was like 10 minutes, and she went from a 7 to a 10, and the bed drops out, and at that point, I'm very nervous. Like, I'm worried about Victoria. I want to make sure she's okay. We didn't really anticipate that they were going to pull out the stirrups. We wanted her to push in a natural position. But at that point, it was kind of game time.
It was hard because I couldn't really talk through contraction. Ryan was trying to, ask them. But I remember they laid me down, and I said, I can't push like this. And it was
I asked her,
it was even hard for me to say that.
I said, are you going to put a platform? I thought there was going to be some type of smaller platform that she could like squat on, because that's really the position. And so eventually, I guess it was a compromise. They pulled the back up really straight. So Victoria was leaned down, but
that was probably the bad thing that which I didn't know. I'm a first-time mom, so I didn't know how that was going to feel, or was I going to be comfortable on my back or not. But I think that was also one of the worst parts. It's like somebody's telling you to take a dump and they lay you down all the way back. And it's like, seriously, you're like suffocating. You're trying to like bear down with the contraction. And that's why like it was so hard for me to push. Like Ryan was like, whenever you were screaming, like you weren't making any progress. And I'm like, number one, I was so in the trance of like breathing through a contraction that it was hard for me to switch mentally to bear down. And then they were telling me to like push.
Because going back a little bit, whenever they came in and said to us, the second nurse, that she had a bulging bag and gave us that option that they could bust it, Victoria was already in pushing mode. Her body was telling her to push, but her body wasn't opened up because the bag was prohibiting it, I guess. Mm-hmm. So they sat there, and the nurse had to coach her through not pushing and said, do not push, do not push. And so Victoria had to reverse that feeling inside of her until the midwife got there. So I think when the midwife finally came, it was hard for her mind to switch back to, okay, let's push.
Yeah.
And so it was about 12 o'clock in the afternoon on November 22nd. Mm-hmm. And that's when they said to start pushing.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not what it's like in the movies, nor is it like these birthing videos that show probably the 1% of people who it seems like that they're just pushing for like a couple minutes and then here comes the baby, and it's so non-messy and all of that. But of course they come in and it's it's very traumatic in a sense. At least, whoa.
She had to burp. That's why she couldn't lay around. Say, Daddy, that was uncomfortable. Just like you didn't like the contractions and laying down. I don't like it when I have to burp. So, yeah, but Ryan was trying to coach me through it, and they were trying to tell me how to push, which, they're like, you don't push from your diaphragm, you push through your, like, basically when you take, like, the poo-poo, that's what the muscles use. But I would just sense so much pressure, and at the same time, the whole time, I'm thinking, these people are liars. I am in so much pain.
She was open, and I was seeing that the baby's head was there, and her hair was showing, I could tell that the baby had hair. And so I was telling Victoria, if you were wondering if the baby had hair, she has hair. And so Victoria told us later, she said, I did not believe you guys at all.
I thought they were lying so that they could, so I could calm down. Because at that point, I was in so much, distress. I felt like I was, losing my mind. I kept looking at the nurses, and I kept looking at Ryan, help me. I just said, help me, because I didn't know what I was doing.
She was a little bit in freak out
I was mode. Delusional. I didn't care. Ryan was like, you sounded like a girl.
I didn't anticipate, number one, that it would be 30 minutes of pushing, which I guess is not long in comparison.
Bless you.
I didn't anticipate that it would be 30 minutes of pushing. And in comparison to some women, I guess that's not that long.
I think Ryan didn't know that there's a break during the contraction time.
It was about like a 3 or 4 minute break between the pushing contractions, in which we would try to encourage her to rest. But I didn't expect it to be as, I don't know, as casual to those people in there helping the midwife and the nurse, to the point that they were texting and answering phone calls, which I didn't like at all. Even though I thought they were great and nice people and did a great job, I just did not want that. You know, I had my music set up. I wanted it to kind of be a tranquil experience. So for them to treat it so nonchalantly was a little bit like, you know, it was off-putting. But so, you know, 30 minutes into it, she was pushing and pushing every time the contractions came, and finally I was like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm worried. I'm like, when is she gonna get out here? You know, we're like 30 minutes into it, and I think it brought me a little anxiety because I could see the heart monitor on her belly. So I could tell that when the baby's heart rate dropped really low and when the baby's heart rate peaked up really high. So I could just, I don't know, if I was reading all of those books beforehand, I was thinking in my mind like, oh my gosh, if it drops so low, then they're going to try to send her in for a C-section, or it's going to be an emergency, or something bad's going to happen. And so I just kept talking myself off the ledge, and Victoria's sitting there and the blood's rushing back to her head after she pushes, and
the head came out. They had to pop the shoulders out. I didn't even feel the head come out, honestly. I have no idea, like, what happened. I felt, like, a little sensation of the ring of fire.
And when I knew that the push that she was in was going to bring her head out, I'd stopped looking because I just didn't want, you know, I didn't expect there to be that much blood, for it to be that traumatic. And I don't know, I don't know why I didn't think that there would be blood or...
Yeah, I think the last contraction that I had, I felt like the midwife, well, I remember the midwife looking at me and she said, the baby's heart rate is really dropping low. I need you to push her out. And she had a really serious look on her face, and I was like, oh, I gotta really push this baby out. And I was trying, but I was like, I'm just so exhausted. And so the two nurses like jumped on the side of my bed because my bed was really elevated high.
After the head was out.
After the head was out, and like 1, 2, 3, and like with me pushing, they pressed on my belly, and I heard the shoulders, like, it's almost like a popping noise, and the shoulders came out, and she just dropped her on my chest. She didn't cry. She didn't make a sound. She was
coughing a little bit.
She was coughing a little bit, but she lifted her head up, and she was just looking around. And that was it.
And then while Victoria was getting taken care of and got rid of all of the rest, they basically left. They just rolled up on out of there.
Because they had somebody else was either delivering or there was another C-section. So
we were sitting there basically a bloody mess, because I took the baby while they were helping Victoria for a little bit. So I had blood and baby on me, and she was, of course, bloody and exhausted. And so we sat there for 2.5 hours, which was really good. I mean, Victoria got to have the skin to skin, and so it was really good, but I just didn't anticipate like 2.5 hours, and they haven't even coming in to like check the baby's vitals or the weight or I don't know. I just thought that all happened kind of in one seamless motion, but we were there for...
It was a good 3 hours.
2.5 or so, yeah.
Before they came and they took care of her, cleaned her, washed her, measured her, got her little footprints, and then cleaned me up, and then they transferred us to like the actual recovery room, which we stayed in. Which, I mean, I really didn't want to stay at the hospital for too long because it's so hard. They come in and out, like they get vitals every 2 hours, which I worked at the hospital, so I understand, but it's just so frustrating, you know, because you're trying to get asleep, you're trying to get acquainted with your infant, and she's crying, and your milk is trying to come in because you're a new mom. And it's just a little bit frustrating because you have so many people coming in and out. But Ryan was able to sleep a little bit, but we were just really
the good thing, she never left our side.
Yeah.
So she was always there. Of course, they had the bracelets on us, but...
I think they took her one time because they had to... I think she just didn't
want to poke her. The next day, they took her for just a second.
They didn't want to poke her in front of us, that nurse.
Yeah.
That nurse was really interesting too. I felt like she was a little condescending. Like, y'all are new parents, y'all don't know nothing. Let me tell y'all everything.
I mean, there's a lot that you go through. I mean, you can only anticipate so much, and then when you get in that moment, you're exhausted. Victoria is way more exhausted than me because she's the one doing all the work. And so we're without sleep for a couple days, and then they give you a child.
Newborn baby.
And
Yeah,
they
but
say
they
take care of
actually
it. Yeah.
they actually didn't want to let us go. They told us if we go to the doctor's office the next day, then that's the only way they would let us go, because where she was bulging, where my bag was bulging, she has a bump on her head, and that's when she came out and they told me she had a little bit of bruising. That's exactly what I felt. Like, I felt the urge to push because there was something there, and she was ready to come out for an hour, and nobody was there to tend to us. So she has a little bump, which, I mean, it's actually going down, but that's what
it caused her bilirubin
levels to go up.
Yeah, and so she had a little bit of jaundice, and so we ended up having to do a light therapy for a couple days, but she's good to go now. I think the hardest part was having her blood drawn so many times for them to check. And
yeah, it was frustrating.
She of course didn't like that at all, so there goes the camera a little bit. She didn't like that at all. But I think overall, I mean, we had we were very blessed. The fact that they honored our birth plan was really good. I'm so proud of Viktoriya, how she pushed through all of the pain, and yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much her birth story. Like, having a baby, y'all, like I told Ryan, I said, I have no idea how single people do it, or how people are just so nonchalant about having a baby, because it's such a big deal. And honestly, like, I don't even feel like I did it naturally, even though I did naturally. I didn't have any epidural or anything. But I felt like I was just losing my mind, and if Ryan was not there, which I think reading a book that we read beforehand was so helpful, which I'll talk more about it in my other videos. And it's basically like a husband coached birth, and he was very supportive, even though he was freaked out at times himself because he didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do, but I was in such a different mode that he had to be my spokesperson. And so Ryan told afterwards, he doesn't blame people that, actually hire a doula, because it can be such a scary time for a husband, because he's not really sure how all of this functions, and he's trying to be the spokesperson, but it's just such
honoring
a
her
different
wishes,
thing.
being encouraging, coaching her along, massaging her lower back, giving her the pep talk when she needs it, when she drops low and she feels like she wants to give up, or I don't know. I think that once she hit the emotional signpost that it was too much for her to bear, that the pushing was right here, and it was obviously too late for any medicine at that point. So it was
honestly
good.
I wasn't really thinking about medicine at any of those times. I think there was only one time that I said, just help me. Like, I didn't know what else to do. Like, I'm like, because they haven't come and checked me for like 4 hours, and I told Ryan, I said, if they check me and I am only 1 centimeter more dilated than what they told me last time, I have no idea how much more pain I can experience. I have been breathing through every contraction, and every time they would come in, they're like, you're doing such a great job, because I would actually, and I never knew why people, like, why women, when they're giving birth, like, why would they, through laboring, they would go, like, but it's so much pain that, like, you have to, like, almost be vocal about it, and it just kind of helps.
She had a low
ease.
hum the whole time.
I had a low hum, so every time they'd come and check on me, I would hear what they would say, but I was so, like, I was, like, laying there, and I was like,
We kept the room quiet. We played some worship music.
Yeah, and they were like, you're doing so good. You're just breathing right through those contractions, and blah, blah, blah. But at the end, when it hit 11 o'clock, I was like, if this is not a 10, I just have no idea what a 10 is. I just felt like I started, like, feeling that bearing down.
And that was the 10.
And that was the 10, because I was like, there's just no way. There's no way. Because I'm usually, like I always say, I have a really high pain tolerance, which I really do. I really do have pain tolerance, but this pain is definitely nothing in comparison to what I felt like before. But I mean, it's fine. It's not being in the know, and it's just like, you're just kind of out there, like, you're not sure if you're at a 10, how many more hours you can do this, and you're in your mind have to, like, talk yourself and say, okay, I got, like, one more, and you're, like, trying to work through them, but you're not sure, Well,
the camera cut off on there for a minute. But basically, what I was saying was that I think we had an epiphany in the midst of like one of the heaviest contractions, where I looked at Victoria, and I don't know where the words came from, but I was looking at her and I said, the pain that you're experiencing right now is not pain meant to hurt you or to take you out or to kill you. I said, this pain is meant to help you. I said, so if you cooperate with this pain, then the pain's going to get you to your expected result of holding your little girl quicker. But if you resist this pain and fight this pain as if it's a disease or a sickness, then the process is going to be longer. And I don't know, that's an epiphany not only for baby, but for your life and things that you go through, and really leaning into the pain versus trying to fight the pain, and which is like against your natural instinct to do. But that's really what you have to do in this laboring process, is lean into the pain as it comes in waves. And I could just watch it come on her in waves, and she would press into it, and it would open her up to the point where she was able to deliver. But I think overall we were so blessed by God that everything was, it happened healthy, and she came, and she's a healthy baby. Victoria's great. I don't know. I mean, I'm very appreciative of the work that Victoria did to bring our little girl into the world. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of care. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of treating your body right while you're pregnant to make sure that she comes out strong and healthy. And so I'll say thank you, and I love you.
It's definitely, I told Ryan, I said, I don't know how people do it without having a support, whether you want your mom in there or sister. But Ryan absolutely did a good job, with us being first parents. We've never experienced any of this, and he really did a good job just rubbing my back and talking me through it. And I know a lot of husbands out there that just kind of lay on the couch and just want to watch a movie or TV while their wife labors, and she can feel really alone in that. And so that was one of my biggest fears, I think, is being alone in this. And it's definitely something that brought us, I think, closer together as a married couple, just because we're a team. And I think we've managed to go through that, and then
the adjustment that the first couple weeks take of sleeping schedules and all that kind of stuff. Victoria learning breastfeeding and all that.
But I think it's such an abnormal thing for a hospital to see, that they were really surprised. They kept oohing and awing every time they would walk in. It was just not a normal thing for them.
Because I think it's easy within the hospital system to treat a pregnant woman like a patient, person. Like a sick person. And there's a difference, This is not a sickness. This is not something that you're trying to, heal, get over from in that sense, like it's a disease. But this is a natural part. A woman's body was built to do this. And so going in with that mindset, which, midwives have, versus being in the hospital system, which of course there's benefits to as well. But I definitely would think we would do that, a midwife. What else would you do?
I mean, of course, I think I would love to give birth in water. I think that would be very helpful.
Because you really responded well to water.
Yeah, I think that was really relaxing. And I think we're running out of time, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, because we already chit-chatted, and maybe we'll have to create another video for you guys later on. But we love you guys and hope this was helpful for some of you. And thank you for following our journey. Be sure to subscribe. As always, create culture and be you. We love you guys.